I am holding Jesse's money for him, and he will receive every last dollar of it.
He will, not you.
Hey everybody, and thank you for watching another video. My name is Merge, and welcome to the Breaking Bad What If series that I call the Heisenverse, a series where I make a change somewhere in the Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul timeline and see how that one change ripples throughout the entire universe. And in this video, we explore the toxic dynamic between Jesse and Jane, again, but this time with a slight twist, because we all know that Jane wore the pants in that relationship.
Nice job wearing the pants.
And what if after finding out about Jesse's money, she had alternative plans to get away from her dad? And what if those plans came at the expense of Jesse? What would that look like? Well, that's what we're here to find out. And if you could leave a like on this video to support the channel, I'd appreciate it. Now, let's get into it.
Dad? I overslept. I'm on my way.
After discovering Jane's relapse, her dad gives her an ultimatum to either go to rehab today or he's calling the cops on her and Jesse. But Jane, putting on the waterworks, manages to convince her father to take her to rehab tomorrow while she gets her affairs in order with her job, houseplants, etc. And after her dad leaves, Jesse would ask Jane if she really meant what she said about getting clean. But she responds saying,
I don't know. I just think if we had enough money, nobody can make us do anything.
And sidebar, but I always thought that Jesse really did want to get clean together with Jane, but when she changed the subject, he just kind of went with it. So for the next few hours, Jane gets Jesse to tell her everything about his business with Walter, from the money to the drugs and even the murders. No detail is left out. Over at the White residence, Skylar hands Walter the phone saying that it's a student on the line wanted to get a recommendation, but it actually turns out to be Jane, and she states her demands, making it pretty clear that she's not Jesse and she's willing to go to the cops to expose Walter if he doesn't bring them the money.
Do right by Jesse tonight, or I will burn you to the ground.
And with no other choice, Walter packs a duffel bag for Jesse and heads over to his house. And after handing over the bag of money, Walter asks,
How do I know she'll keep quiet?
and to that, Jane says,
I guess you don't.
before slamming the door in his face. And when the two open up the bag to see all that money, they're both stunned to see so much cash, and they discuss where they're going to go and what they're going to do with their newfound freedom. Because Jesse at this point, he's willing to follow Jane everywhere. But for Jane, before she saw the money, it was just her and Jesse against the world. But now that the money's here, those feelings change to just her against the world as she becomes overwhelmed with the feeling of greed. And the thought of her no longer living under her father's thumb is definitely the driving force behind those feelings. So as they talk about flushing the drugs and leaving tonight, when they see the remaining heroin, Jane comes up with the sinister idea to take Jesse out of the picture and still keep the money in the process. Because if we're being honest here, Jane is the one who really wants to get away, and she knows that Jesse still has a soft spot for Walter and he can likely have a change of heart about leaving. So to prevent that from happening, Jane would purposely give Jesse a lethal dose of heroin, and once he nods off, she would also roll him on his back. And similar to Walter, Jane watches Jesse choke on his own vomit until he takes his last breath. But Jane would show no emotion to Jesse dying. Instead, after she checks his pulse, Jane would pack her bags, including Jesse's money, and get ready to leave for good. But as she nearly makes it to the door, there's a sudden knock, and when she looks through the peephole, she sees that it's Walter, and she hears him say, Jesse, I just want to talk. And as Jane stands there nervous and scared listening to Walter knock, she would then watch as he makes his way around back. And once he breaks through the cardboard on the back door panel, she would simultaneously leave through the front door undetected. And as soon as she makes it back into her apartment, the first thing she does is report a break-in, figuring that if Walter's busy with the cops, especially after she tells him his secrets, she can then make her escape with the money before her dad comes tomorrow. Meanwhile, inside Jesse's apartment, Walter walks in only seeing Jesse lying in his bed looking to be passed out. But after taking a closer look at Jesse, Walter notices that he's not breathing, and he quickly goes to start shaking Jesse to try to wake him up, but he gets no response. And Walter even resorts to slapping him, but Jesse remains unresponsive. It's only until after he checks his pulse that he realizes that Jesse's dead. And with a look of disbelief on his face, Walter gets up, pulling out his phone to call Saul to get a game plan about what to do. And he says, stumbling over his words, Saul, I need your help. It's Jesse. I need you to call someone now. And Saul says, trying to calm down Walter. Whoa, slow down, Maestro. What's going on with the kid? Did you kick the bucket or something? This is serious, Saul. He's not breathing and his girlfriend is... Wait a minute. Wait. Walter says, stopping in mid-sentence to walk around the house. And Saul, still on the other line, says, Hello? Are you still there? Did I hear you right? Did you say the kid's not breathing? Hello? Saul says, but Walter ignores him while he still searches around the house. And after a few seconds, Walter comes back on the line sounding like he's out of breath. It's gone. The money. She must have taken it. Money? What money? You know what? Scratch that. Walt, you have to get out of there now. The last thing you want to be involved with is anything having to do with Jesse Pinkman, drug overdose, anything of the sorts. Come by my office and we'll talk strategy. Saul says to Walter before hanging up, and in a hurry, Walter goes to leave the house. But as he leaves out the front door, there's police pulling up with their guns drawn, yelling for Walter to put his hands up. And even though he wasn't there long, according to the events of El Camino, police in this universe has unbelievable response time.
I would appreciate it very much if you send someone immediately.
Pathetic.
Wow, you love that response time.
Walter complies before trying to reason with the police as they approach, saying in a manic tone, There's been an overdose inside. He's not breathing. Please, you have to help him." And 2 of the 3 officers rush inside, leaving Walter on the porch with the 1 remaining officer to take his statement. And right as Walter is discussing why he's there to the officer, out steps Jane from her apartment next door, and she comes out as his hysterical girlfriend targeting her frustration at Walter, saying, "What is he doing here? What did you do to Jesse?" And Walter snaps back in anger, saying, "What did I do to Jesse? He was perfectly fine when I—" "Alright, that's enough," the officer says, cutting off Walter and directing his attention towards Jane. "Ma'am, can I help you?" "Yes, I'm the one who called. I heard some banging next door and I come to find out that he's here," Jane says, referring to Walter, who is just scowling at her before he says in response, "Officer, my nephew lives here. When I came by earlier, he was fine. He was sober. Now I come to find him dead, covered in vomit, and the only person who was there last time I was here was her," Walter explains sternly without taking his eyes off Jane. The cops would then come out the house confirming Jesse's overdose, and overhearing the officers, Jane would then turn that concerned girlfriend charade up to 11, bursting out crying while blaming Walter, saying, "He's the last person who should be talking about being sober," Jane says, pointing at Walter with tears streaming down her face. And the police goes to separate Jane and Walter to calm her down and take her statement as well. But the whole time, Walter stands uneasy watching Jane talk to the cops, unknown as to what secrets of his are being told. But here's the thing, Walter technically did break an entry, and the fact that Jesse's dead in the house, with the inclusion of Jane being the one who called and the building manager, she would choose to press charges for the break-in, and Walter would be taken down to the station for additional questioning. And as Walter's being put in the police car, he looks through the window at Jane, who watches the police and the coroners leave and gives a subtle smirk before going back inside to pack her belongings. And literally in the next 5 minutes, Jane would have everything packed, including Jesse's $480,000, and she puts out a cigarette before driving off, not even dropping so much as a single tear for what she's done to Jesse. Over at the police station, Walter is getting more and more frustrated with the cops as he says now for the 3rd time, "As I said before, the back door was open, and when I came in, I seen him like that. That's all I know. I don't know anything about being a drug dealer, dealing drugs, or whatever she told you. And are you really gonna take the word of a junkie? Seriously?" Walter questions with anger with a little sarcasm. And before the cops can respond, Saul comes in banging on the door, and once inside, he tells the cops, "Okay, that is enough. No more violating my client's constitutional rights. Thing 1, thing 2, get out," he says, dismissing the cops. And once alone with Walter, Saul tells him in his usual charm, "Okay, Walt, so the good news is I was able to pull some strings that made this whole incident go bye-bye. As for the bad news, let's talk about that on our way back to my office." And not long after, Saul and Walter were able to leave the police station with all charges dropped. And as the 2 drive to Saul's office, Walter would say angrily, "That damn junkie. She's not gonna get away for what she's done to Jesse." And Saul responds looking at Walter, then back at the road. And that's the bad news. So on my way over here, I had one of my guys stop by Jesse's house to collect his money before it got seized by the cops, because I'm always looking out for you guys. But not only is it not there, but the girlfriend who lives next door is also gone. I got him watching the house right now just in case when or if she comes back, but how do you want to handle this? And Walter is quiet for a few seconds while looking out the window, but then he says in a sinister tone, "Can your guy find her?" And Saul gives Walter a look, knowing exactly why he wants to know Jane's whereabouts, before saying, "I'll get my guy on it right away." A couple days pass and Walter is called over to Saul's office, where he's introduced to Mike Ehrmantraut, known only to Walter as Saul's private investigator who was able to track down Jane, and he gives Walter Jane's schedule for the past few days, saying, "I've been tailing her for the past few weeks, and from what I've seen, she either spends her time at this tattoo parlor named Albuquerque Inc. or at this hotel room on the other side of town." And Walter, armed with that information, decides one day before his surgery to pay Jane a visit that night. And he puts on his signature Heisenverse hat, and he conceals his .38 snub nose in his waistline. And Walter would easily break into the hotel room only to find Jane already nodded off with a needle still in her arm. And as Walter gets closer, now standing over Jane, he just looks down at her with a look of disgust as he reaches for his gun. Then he glances over to the filled syringe that's on her bedside, and he slowly picks it up to examine it for a moment. Walter then grits his teeth before grabbing Jane's arm and injecting her with the syringe. And as he leaves the needle in her arm, Walter just takes a step back and waits for nature to run its course. And seconds later, Jane begins to cough and vomit uncontrollably. And while standing over her, just for a moment, Walter hesitates about saving her, but instead he chooses just to watch her die in the same manner she killed Jesse. And once she's taken her last breath, Walter spots the duffel bag with Jesse's money in the corner of the hotel room. And he would once again make a call to Saul, but this time it would be Walter giving him a list of things that he needs, including a polyethylene barrel and a couple of gallons of hydrofluoric acid. After a few days, we pick up with Jane's dad, who's still on the search for his daughter, and every day for the past week there's been search parties, news broadcasts, and even cash rewards. But sadly, Jane's body will never be found, especially after Walter was finished with her. But without a body, Jane's dad would never stop looking, and eventually he would lose his job. And the only good news to come out of all of this is that it would prevent the Wayfair 757 accident from happening and saving hundreds of lives in the process. And as for Walter, after he pays off Mike and Saul, he would choose to keep Jesse's half of the money for himself. After all, they were partners.
I mean, he's my partner.
He's my partner. Partners.
And one day while rocking Holly, Walter brings her down to the basement where he keeps his money, and he says to her, "You see that? Daddy did that for you." But instead of being proud of what he was able to earn for his family, Walter begins to feel guilt for what he had to do to get it. From all the lies he told his family, killing Crazy 8, and now Jane. A feeling that's amplified almost every day that he watches the news and sees Donald, Jane's dad, pleading for help to find his daughter. And Walter, snapping out of his guilt trip, would look down at Holly and then back up at the money and says, "Don't tell mommy, but we're gonna find a new home, okay?" Walter says, continuing to rock Holly in his arms. And if I could, I'm just gonna fast forward past the part where Walter no longer needs Saul or Mike, because after everything that happened with Jesse and Jane, he would just choose to be out. And I'm also gonna speed past the part where he would have one last meeting with Gus to part ways, and he would decline his $3 million for 3 months offer, saying to Gus,
I have more money than I know how to spend.
We then pick up at Walter's house days later, and after finishing packing for the move, likely to go to Florida or someplace because, why not, he's currently taking a shower. But without the aid of Mike being there to have those bugs in place, he would receive an unexpected visit from the Salamanca twins, who come with the permission from Hector to have their blood debt repaid. And as they slowly enter the house with the axe in hand, they sit and wait patiently on the bed until he gets out. And hearing the water from the shower stop, they both stand up in unison with Lionel readying the axe. The bathroom door would then open slowly with Walter still humming a song, and he stands in front of the doorway wiping his face with a towel, unaware of the Salamanca twins' presence. But before he can react, Walter would be grabbed and held down by Marco near the bedside, exposing Walter's neck. And while he struggles to break his captor's hold, Lionel would swing the axe over and over, splattering Walter's blood with each swing until he's decapitated. Marco then lets go, leaving Walter's body to fall like a marionette with his strings cut. And the twins would both kneel down to watch Walter's body just pour out blood. Marco then takes a card of the Grim Reaper out of his jacket pocket and places it on Walter's body, officially satisfying the Salamanca's need for revenge. Later on, when Skylar and Holly return home, she enters the house and on the surface, everything seems fine. It's only until she goes into the bedroom where she finds Walter's headless body lying on the floor with the blood soaking through the carpet, a sight that causes her to scream out in horror as she quickly leaves the room. And with Walter Jr. being at his friend Lewis's house, Skylar does her best to keep her composure before calling her son and tell him not to come home, instead to meet her at Hank and Marie's. And as she pulls out the driveway, she then calls Hank to tell him about the gruesome discovery. And within 5 minutes, Walter's house is filled with cops all trying to understand what happened, because to the untrained eye, it just looks like a break-in gone wrong. But to the eyes of the experienced DEA brother-in-law, when seeing the card on Walter's body plus the scythe drawn outside his front house, it would be ruled as a cartel attack, leaving everyone with the same thought. Why would the cartel go after Walter of all people? But that thought doesn't linger long after Walter's money is found. It presents everyone with a new question. Who exactly was Walter White? But without anything else to go by other than the money that's likely going to be seized anyway, making Walter's choice to cook meth ultimately pointless and leaving his family worse off than before he started. So in the end, Walter choosing not to save Jane in the original was the best move for everyone. Well, almost everyone. Hey everybody, and thank you so much for watching another video, and I really hope you enjoyed the story from the Heisenverse. And in many ways, I feel that Jane's death is kind of like a nexus point in the Breaking Bad timeline, kind of like the MCU, where she's basically destined to die in order for Walter to push his agenda forward, and if she doesn't, there's just going to be pure chaos in the universe. And this story was left incomplete on purpose, just in case I wanted to come back to the storyline and see how the series would play out without Walter or Jesse in it, and at the same time give some aftermath to the police discovery about Walter's drug money, which will no doubt raise some eyes at the DEA about Hank. So how about this? If I get 10K likes on this video, I will make a sequel to this story. Seems fair, right?
Fair's fair.
And I do have a Discord that I will be linking down below where we can all talk Breaking Bad and just have a good time talking about these what if videos. But now I want to hear from you guys. What did you think of this story? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Whatever it is, let me know down below in the comments and I'll do my best to respond. Until then, my name is Merge. Later.